At Per Scholas, we're proud to be working alongside leaders in this space to build a skilled and ready workforce. We are especially proud to be doing that through our data center technician and core programs offered in partnership with TEKsystems. I'd like to highlight that we are celebrating 10 years of impactful partnership with TEKsystems. This collaborative effort has enabled us to launch innovative training programs, expanding pathways for inclusive talent to enter high-growth tech careers. Before I introduce our panelists, I'd like to share some context about the current landscape of the industry. Data center jobs have surged by 60% from 2016 to 2023, but 60% of companies are still facing hiring and retention challenges. Addressing the skills gap will require concerted efforts in education, training, and mentorship programs to prepare the next generation of data center professionals. At Per Scholas, we're preparing individuals with in-demand skills in cloud platforms, networking security, and data management. Looking ahead, roles like cloud architects and data center operators and technicians will be especially sought after. To meet this demand, we're focused on equipping our learners with relevant skills and certifications to fill these gaps. At Per Scholas, we offer a 16-week IT data center technician course covering IT infrastructure fundamentals, system administration, and Windows Server management. This program leads to several industry-recognized certifications, which offers our graduates real career pathways in the industry. Additionally, our partnership with TEKsystems has led to the creation of an 8-week data center technician program focused on low-voltage cabling, IT hardware management, power and cooling systems, as well as governance standards. Our work with TEKsystems is a prime example of aligning training programs with market demands. Together, we're committed to expanding access to no-cost technology training programs, especially in cloud computing and data center operations. So today, I have the pleasure of moderating a panel of rock stars who carry a wealth of expertise in this space of data centers and workforce development. First up, we have Craig Curry, who is a data center technician with Microsoft. Craig is also a stellar Per Scholas alumni. And I should correct myself and say that he's a data center technician manager at Microsoft. Next, we have John Lullen, who is the managing executive of Marketplace Inclusion at TEKsystems. John focuses on inclusive hiring and workforce modernization. Riley Mahler is a regional director for the Microsoft account at TEKsystems, and he is tasked with driving managed and professional services partnerships with Microsoft. And finally, we have Jasmine Smiley, regional program manager for data center operations at Microsoft. She specializes in change management and infrastructure builds. Thank you all for joining us today. I think we should dive right in. This first question, Riley, what are the key technological and market trends fueling the rapid growth of data centers?
It's a great question. It's a big topic. First off, thanks for having us here and thanks for hosting this forum. It's really looking forward to this topic. I'm going to try to answer this topic without too much jargon, but you're going to have to forgive me. There will be a little bit, but I'll try to explain it. So the big thing that's driving a lot of change in the data center right now, a lot of people hear AI, that's definitely contributing to it. But if you looked at the simpler reason, it's more compute. So the data centers are needing to be equipped with more devices that can do compute. So if you think about it, like you have a cell phone, right? A cell phone's basically a computer. If you look at the applications that are running on your cell phone, those applications are only going to get bigger, harder to run. And if you look at like computers nowadays, you would need to spend thousands of dollars to get computers that can run these apps. What's happening is more of the compute is going to be happening out of the data centers, and it's going to be streamed to your phone. It's going to be streamed to the devices that you have, so all the IoT. So the shift that's happening is you're getting more compute in the data centers. The jargon that I'll throw out there is GPU, graphical processing units. So when you see like NVIDIA stock blowing up and all the things happening there, it's because they're creating servers that have more of that GPU. They can do more of that compute. Now, the challenge that creates in the data center is these particular types of servers, they need about 700% to 1,000% more energy to run these things, which I'll give some stats on this that's kind of mind-blowing in a little bit, but they need to build new data centers that can allow for, with efficient power use, these devices that eat up 1,000 times more energy. So the fundamental big problem right now that's going to be solved over the next several years is you are going to take water with liquid cooling, electronics, and crazy high voltage, and you're going to put them all next to each other, right? So nothing can go wrong with that, right? Those things love being around each other. So you're going through a massive transformation in technology where these data centers are trying to get to more compute. AI leverages a ton of compute, so that's why you hear it the most. But these data centers are changing to be more compute oriented than just storage.
That's fascinating. A follow-up question for you, Riley. How is TEKsystems seeing this growth reflected in client demand and workforce needs across regions?
So I'll start with saying this. It's anybody that's done economics 101, supply and demand, right? That is supply and demand is still undefeated. And so let's talk about the demand side a bit of data centers. I had a teammate, somebody from our team, just pulled together just different articles. And with not too much work, basically he pulled together, there was 12 companies that committed over $1 trillion in data center infrastructure build out spend over the next couple of years. Trillion. Like that is a mind-blowing number, and that's just 12 companies, primarily hyperscalers, right? So the big, the Microsofts, the Metas, the Nvidias, the Apples. Hyperscalers only make up about 35%, 40% of the data centers, right? So that $1 trillion is actually a much, much larger number. How that's actually being spread out, I think the easiest way to look at data center size and scope is the metric that they typically use is megawattage. So the amount of power it takes to run these data centers. I contributed to that this morning when I got on Copilot and co-piloted how much megawattage is there today in data centers. It's about 66,000 megawatts to run the data centers. To give perspective, all of New York City is about 9,000 megawatts. So you have one of the largest cities in the world that has 10 million people living in it that is only about 12% of the total data center footprint today. So when I talk about those retrofits that are happening, right, with the GPUs, with the compute, these devices eat up 700% to 1,000% more utility, more energy, more megawattage. So when you project that over the next several years, the megawattage footprint increase is going to be probably 50% a year for the foreseeable future. How that's broken out over the world, data centers isn't just like a North American or American thing. Like we're seeing a huge chunk of that here. Roughly 33% or so of the megawattage footprint of data centers is in North America, but 20 to 25% of that is throughout EMEA or Europe. And then another 30 to 35% or so of that's throughout Asia. So it is a global opportunity. So all that spend, all that growth, all that infrastructure build, what we're seeing in terms of demand is there's from what I've read, roughly about 300,000 or so data center oriented openings that are unfilled right now. If you look at the total data center labor footprint, and that's not just technicians inside the data centers, but construction, things supporting around it, there's about 2.3 million jobs. So when you're talking about 300,000 employee deficit to 2.3 million of active jobs, and then you talk about the growth that's projected, we aren't keeping up right now in terms of like the talent that can go out there and do that. And that's where this is so important.
Thinking about that 300K vacancy, where are you seeing the most urgent demand for data center talent, whether it be a specific role or industry?
The space that we play in, so I'll be a little bit narrower than the rest of the data center footprint, right? But where TEKsystems typically plays in, we play in like the white space of the data center. So basically everything from semi trucks pull up with all the equipment, getting that all unloaded into the data center, getting everything built in the data center, things plugged in, and then supporting that equipment through its life cycle. That's what we play in. So we're seeing a huge demand right now into probably 3 or 4 key skill sets, right? Data center technicians or DCTs. You're seeing a ton of work with logistics skill sets, so the people that can organize everything. And then you're also seeing a lot of skill sets around critical environments, so the people that can help manage the buildings. On top of that, you get a lot of project management. There's a lot more IT management that goes into this. But when you look at the broader ecosystem of data center, I mean, you're talking construction skill sets, right? Tons of construction management, people actually doing these builds, all the site acquisition. There's a ton of utility, electricians, HVACs, people working on massive generators, the amount of engineering that goes into these things. I mean, the data center footprint it's honestly a modern marvel of the world, what's being built right now. It's literally an industrial revolution style kind of thing that's happening right now. So we are seeing a huge demand though for the people that can take those compute, right? The GPUs, build the modern infrastructure to house those, a lot of the liquid cooling, and then people that can install and maintain those servers and maintain those data centers, massive amount of opportunity in that. And that's just what TEKsystems sees. But outside of that, the construction and everything else I mentioned, tons of opportunity there as well.
Thank you, Riley. Craig, I'm coming over to you. You graduated from Per Scholas in 2023. How did Per Scholas prepare you for your current role?
First of all, I'm elated to be part of this all-star panel. As you stated, rock stars. Per Scholas prepared me for the role I'm in right now with Microsoft and layers. So the first layer will be the hands-on training, which is a classroom instruction. The foundation and network and learning and industry standards. The next one, which sometimes may get overlooked, but was just as important as the technical side, was the professional mindset. Per Scholas invested in my professional development. It was every Wednesday we would have to work on our resumes and how we were going to transition into that technical industry, which paid off because it then gave me the confidence. When I talk about the program and people always say, well, how much did it cost? It was free, but there's one thing you have to give back, and that's you have to commit to being great. You have to commit to being great. Per Scholas will give you the confidence that you will get a lot of emails from the alumni trying to get you involved. There's no shortage of commitment that they've done on their end. But the one thing they will expect is for you to be great. And in turn, you will have the tools you need to transition into that technical industry, like Microsoft and others, with confidence, with professional mindset, and with the skill set as far as technology to be a big part of the future of data centers and so forth.
Thanks, Craig. John, from your lens leading marketplace inclusion, what does an inclusive hiring strategy look like in the data center space?
Definitely. I got to chime in real quick, Craig. It's so great to see you on this call. I remember the inaugural Phoenix graduation, listening to all of your peers or watching you speak while all of your peers were watching you. It was amazing. So this is a full circle moment, man. Definitely glad to have you here in this conversation. But Brittany, the answer to your question that I would say, honestly, it's about ensuring that you're attracting and retaining a high-performing team that's not homogenous, right? And this is beyond data centers, but the fact that we're having this conversation, I think we all agree that data center is going to thrive when the workforce consists of the broadest range of backgrounds, perspectives, and experiences. The other thing that I think is extremely important is cultivating intentional relationships with external partners that can help you develop talent. That's key because we all know that there's a skill shortage right now. And an example of that is how we, TEKsystems, partner with Per Scholas, right? We recognize that there were challenges from a supply and demand perspective. I think, Brittany, you talked about this early on when you were going through the slides. And since then, when we launched the inaugural class in Northern Virginia from a data center perspective in early 2022, we've now supported over 200 professionals in their data center career journey in the last couple of years, obviously, including Craig. So just making sure the team's not homogenous, building strong relationships, that's key, and you'll feel growth.
Thank you, John. Jasmine, how is Microsoft prioritizing inclusion as a part of its data center workforce development strategy?
Yeah, thanks so much, Brittany, for having me here today, and happy to represent Microsoft. And I will also echo John. It's amazing to see Craig. I've been with him on his journey, and it makes my heart happy to see a journey like that. So thank you for having me today. Brittany, I think it's interesting because John touched on it a little bit. Those inclusive backgrounds that we have and we strive for don't stem from a subset of software engineers. So oftentimes folks think of Microsoft and they say, I have to be an engineer or I have to have a long-standing education background in IT. Really, we're building for humans. So when Riley talks about that scale of data centers, we're building for humans. And in order to build for humans, you have to have humans working for you from various backgrounds, educations, experiences to innovate and create for more humans, right? And so Microsoft prioritizes diversity, but also the inclusive backgrounds by reaching out to those communities that maybe we haven't. Riley touched on specifically the construction background. A lot of times folks don't realize that although you are a plumber by trade and have been doing this for the past 15 years, that we also need plumbers in data centers to make them run, to have our liquid cooling. We need HVAC, right, to help support our buildings and our systems. We need critical environments and those folks who are electricians and have experience with power to get that data going. And so by reaching out to those communities, it allows us to invite those folks who already have that experience and or have that relationship and background with those in the community to invite them to come into our data centers. And so Microsoft really prioritizes that by partnering with not only TEKsystems, but Per Scholas. We are able to get hands on the ground with those around us who have been doing this and just are not familiar maybe with what Microsoft is doing. And so we really strive to do that in a way that is inviting, but also allows for folks to be educated about simply what is a data center. If I had $1 for every time someone asked me that, I wouldn't have to work every day, Brittany, because I think that it's such that untouched territory that Riley talks about around what our data centers do and what it actually means for the communities that it's going in. And so it's some untouched territory that we're just now breaking into.
That is insightful. And I have a follow-up question for you. Why is increasing representation in this field essential for long-term business success at Microsoft or anywhere?
That's a great question. I'll give you a good example. If we look at this call, you and I are the only ladies on this call. And oftentimes when we're in that space, it's very similar. And so representation is important for a couple of reasons. One, folks don't know what space they are actually welcome and invited to. And unless they see themselves there, oftentimes you won't see them apply and or even dig into those opportunities unless they see someone who looks like them. The other thing is, as you know, we have a wide range of circumstances and experiences and backgrounds of folks. You have college graduates, you have some early in career, some who may have never had the opportunity to get that advancement. And so by having that representation of those various backgrounds allows someone to feel comfortable enough to say, hey, that could be me in that space. And oftentimes we hear, hey, I never thought I could be in that space for whatever reason because I didn't see anyone like me. And so it's something that I personally am passionate about, but Microsoft as a whole is passionate about bringing that, closing that door and allowing folks to truly be themselves and show up every day. And you can't do that unless you see someone like yourself there already.
Thank you, Jasmine. John, same question. Why is increasing representation in this field essential for long-term business success?
I mean, do I really have to follow Jasmine after everything that she just said? I mean, I would agree with everything that Jasmine just said. She said it so wonderfully. Even the visual example of the representation on this call, I think that was strong too. I mentioned this a little bit in the first question, but homogeneous teams stifle growth at the end of the day. So broadening your reach and incorporating talent from a wide array of backgrounds is going to fuel innovation is going to fuel creativity. And that's extremely important in this AI economy with data center growth booming.
Thank you. Riley, I'd like to come back to you. How has TEKsystems' partnership with Per Scholas empowered TEKsystems' ability to build sustainable talent pipelines for your clients?
It's absolutely critical, right? So when I go back to the supply and demand challenge, right? More of these data centers are going to be built. They're getting more complex. You need more people working in them. So the challenge that we have is how do we address like the supply side of labor, right? And we have to create it. The other thing with these data centers is oftentimes they're built in rural areas, right? So there's a ton of economic development that happens in those areas. There's tons of partnerships with technical schools, and the more that we can do to drive partnerships to help solve this, the better. There's a proverb that I've always really liked, and it's if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. At the end of the day, our job is to help build really powerful teams to solve really dynamic, challenging problems. You cannot build powerful teams without perspective. And that's really the goal of what we're driving here. So the partnership that we have with Per Scholas, we absolutely cherish. We're trying to find new and innovative ways to continue to challenge ourselves and to grow together. The partnership we have with Microsoft is the same thing, and the dynamic between all three of us is even more powerful than any singular two-way partnership. So just continuing to find ways that we will challenge each other to solve these problems. I'm very confident that, I don't have all the answers today. I will never have all the answers, but I think, our collective group will come up with better ideas together.
I couldn't agree more, Riley. John, same question. Anything to add?
Yeah, you keep making me follow these amazing responses from my partners here, Brittany. You set me up. That's wild. Absolutely. I'm going to touch on the history of the partnership between TEKsystems and Per Scholas briefly, right? We've been on this journey, as Riley said, together for over a decade at this point, which is amazing to think about. And we've created opportunity for over 1,300 professionals, helping them advance their career in a wide variety of skill sets, not just limited to the data center. For me personally, when you think about the question you asked me earlier from a marketplace inclusion perspective at TEKsystems, our partnership together is a key component in how we go to market, right? It's a differentiator that positively impacts not only the job seekers, but also the clients that we partner with, like Microsoft. There's something very empowering to walk into a room and ask thought-provoking questions to Jasmine, right, about how she's developing talent, building talent for the future. How are you partnering with outside external sources to do that? And not only do you have a partner in TEKsystems, but then we can edify our partner Per Scholas when they're not in the room, and then build tangible solutions together. It's special.
Thank you, John. Jasmine, what do you look for in a workforce development partner like Per Scholas, and how does that training translate to on-the-job performance?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brittany. We look for more Craigs. So we look for a partner who really values the people. I think that's the first thing. Anyone can learn these technical skills. They can be trained in any way, shape, and form. But I think Craig touched on it, right? It's multi-layered. So when you train someone for not only your data center environments, but I would say our Microsoft as a whole, it's multi-layered. Again, we're building for people. And so sure, we can build servers, we can build data centers, but what is the impact that we're making? And then also building our teams up. You can't build without someone next to you, and it requires that team. I don't know any person on this planet who's built a data center alone. And so in order for you to be successful, it's important that you understand it's going to require those partnerships, require partnerships like this. And that oftentimes requires those soft skills or those interpersonal skills that we require. And then just that mindset of you can do it. Oftentimes we overcome, and Craig could probably speak to this for days, we overcome hurdles that we never thought we would, and no 2 days are the same. And so your ability to do that with grace, but also keeping your team in mind. And then as a reminder, the end result is our customer, right? And so we really look at those partners who develop those skills along the way, and that it's a much more holistic big picture than that in the moment training, because anyone can get that technical training. You can look it up, right? But really developing the person so that they're ready to tackle those challenges and also have a good time while you're doing it, right? Is important, but really developing those folks in their entirety is what we look for in those partnerships.
I love it. Those qualitative soft skills, so important to culture. Craig, can you walk us through what a typical day looks like for you as a data center technician? You're on mute, Craig.
I
There we go.
apologize. There we go. So what does a typical day look like? Just like what just happened. Little mistakes will happen, right? You may forget to do little things, but as long as you address them and move forward, everything's going to be okay. So and that question, you have to pause for a minute because right away I want to say, well, no 2 days are the same, which is true, but the structure, which ultimately our goal, Microsoft to the customer, is uptime. Uptime, right? We heard Riley talk about these data centers and the memory, the GPU. Somebody has to keep that going. So our promise to the customer is we will be operationally efficient and you won't have a lot of downtime. So that's the structure of the day. Now the task and so forth was required to make that happen. There is no typical day. So shortly after the day starts, I usually start with what we call a handoff, which we go through the day, looking at incidents. We call it a queue, which is having all the tickets, and looking at what the workload looks like. Automation plays a huge part in managing these data centers. It is the dashboard we use. It talks to us to tell us where the problem is and how long it's been there and so forth. So we rely on data AI a lot, but as you would always say, we need humans as well. So a typical day, a technician will usually, after the handoff or the morning review, they'll usually go in. We're going to keep talking about layers because there's layers in data center. You can do break fix, which is replacing parts of a server. You can do what we call RMA, which is a little bit more advanced, working with network engineers to solve some of the problems. But one thing that's key, we talk about the technical side. We talked about how important it is and how Per Scholas gives you that technical side. But one thing that you will learn is documentation is key. Documentation is key. Every time you make a repair, you have to log it. You have to tell others what you did, how you did it. So when people say, what is it like? Yes, you get to go to the servers, pull them out, replace parts, but you do have to document everything you're doing. And Per Scholas prepares you for that. That's what I was talking about, the professional part, to how to walk. It is a fast-paced, hands-on environment. I cannot deny that. But having an awesome manager will also help. But one thing I would honestly say is that working for Microsoft, you hear a lot of people say, Craig, your story. What's going on with that? So some may be like, what is his story? What is going on with his story? But my climb through the ladder at Microsoft has been nothing but amazing. And as we get to the end, if we have time, I'll be more than happy to share. But looping back around, your typical day may change, but everything is going to center around making sure all those devices and everything is uptime and operationally efficient for the customer.
Thanks, Craig. Jasmine, what kinds of environments, team structures, or support systems are in place for new technicians entering Microsoft data centers?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brittany. And believe it or not, I was new myself. So just a little over 2 years ago, I knew zero about data centers. And so if that tells anyone anything, that you have a support system, you absolutely do when you walk through the door. I would say the first thing that is set up is everyone around you is in it for the same reason. So oftentimes people, you join a new team, it's really difficult, do folks have separate priorities? Everyone's working towards the same thing. So that's the first thing. The second thing is everyone is in it to learn. So as Craig mentioned, the days are dynamic. And with that comes lots of opportunities to learn. No one knows everything and they never will. And so your ability to ask questions, have those documents that provide resources for support. We have education, online training, hands-on training. We give you that support system to set you up for success every single day. I think at the same time, we kind of break down those walls of don't ask so-and-so that, or you can't ask here. Everybody's asking all the time, whether you've been there 5 minutes or you've been there 5 years. And so I think we really create this dynamic environment that allows folks to truly break down those barriers and just learn and build together. You do have a huge team. Everyone in the building plus is there to support you. It's interesting. Craig and I, when I was physically at the data center, I would see him. And it's almost like you could see each other, like, you got this, boom, high five, keep going, right? Because it's moving so quick. And although you may not interact with each other every single day, if I needed something, I knew I could call Craig and vice versa, right? And so we really create that dynamic to set folks up for success for whatever they need, but also as someone walking in new, we don't leave you hanging. You're not in this alone. And so we really allow for that partnership to happen.
Thank you, Jasmine. Craig, I'm going to go back to you. What might surprise someone about working in a data center, especially someone transitioning from a non-technical background or career?
So just like Jasmine said, 2 years ago, I was not in the data center space. And one of the things that some people haven't been in Microsoft, and I can truly say Microsoft hires for potential, not credentials, if that makes sense. So coming in, I was like, oh, I have to get this certification and that certification and that certification. Well, that's not true. You don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to be a coder. Like Jasmine talked about, we value ourselves on culture. And when we talk about culture, we talk about being comfortable. Be you. That's probably one of the big things coming in. I was like, everyone is them. They're comfortable in their own skin. And it's not by accident, it's by design. So that's one of the biggest. The other one is, let's be honest, being in the data center space, you do have to pay attention to detail. You have to adhere to procedures. We have a troubleshooting guide for every type of thing you can think of. So you have to be able to follow that. You do have to, like I just stated, you don't really have to, one thing people think they have to know it all. They have to go into the technical side so deep, and you really don't. Working in the data center is very hands-on. You will learn it every day. If you're doing it for a week, you will make leaps and bounds by how much you learn inside the data center space because it is very hands-on. So that's probably one of the most surprising things that I can say people will run into is they think they need to know all this, but you really don't. We have by design set up a learning structure. You will be successful. There is no doubt about it. You will be successful. So that's probably one of the biggest things where coming into the data space from something that, and that's the benefit of this type of panel and this type of event, is people who learn, maybe I don't. Let me just stick my foot in the door and we will take care of the rest.
Jasmine, anything to add?
Yeah, thanks, Brittany. And Craig, I just wanted to add a little bit more to that. I get that question all the time. I don't work in the data center field, or I don't work in IT at all. How do I get my foot in the door? And I did not work in the tech field either. I actually started my career as a kindergarten and first grade teacher. So the furthest thing that you could get from working in IT. And so I often tell folks, it is so much more than those technical skills. Think about what you're doing today that is transferable to help build for the future. So if you're a program manager and you're helping drive a company or a nonprofit, if you are working in construction field and you're running a team or even supporting that team, can you support our team who is also building, right? If you are good with your hands and you're good at building things and plugging in cables, we have a ton of cables for you to plug in, right? And so those are transferable skills that I think folks underestimate of things that they're doing today that you are absolutely qualified for in a data center environment. I will never be able to do what Craig does hands-on, right? I know that true and true. My skills are lied in leading people, right? And so we balance each other out, and we balance each other out with our teams because we make that known, but also that's what creates that inclusive environment. So I would just encourage folks to look at what you're doing today, look at your background. Even retail store, we often get folks early in career who said, I worked at a retail store. How in the world does that transfer? You are helping those customers. You're giving them, you are serving them exactly what we need. And we're doing just the same. It's just the product is different. So think about how those skills transfer and how you can really highlight that when either you're applying or when you're talking to someone in the network.
That's really helpful, Jasmine. And while I have you, what entry-level roles are in high demand right now? And what's the growth potential for people starting in these positions?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So there's a few. One being our data center technicians, like Riley talked about. We can't get enough. We can't have enough hands because we're just building too quick, right? And so we need folks who can work on those servers and really help us build. I would say the other positions that are actually readily available is on the construction side. And so oftentimes those are overlooked for numerous reasons. One, people forget that they exist, but we need folks who are in the construction field, land development, those folks who are at HVAC, like I mentioned, plumbers, electricians. We cannot build without them. And currently here in Phoenix, we're using all of them. Everyone who can do anything, we're using all of them, right? And so those, I would say, are kind of the entry-level roles that we're looking at that would get someone's foot into the data center. We also have critical environment technicians, and those are entry-level roles as well on the power side. And so those roles are readily available. They're plentiful, and we would encourage folks to start there. Once you start there, as you see with Craig and many other of the alumni, you can go just about anywhere once you got your foot in the door.
Thank you, Jasmine. I just want to add a little bit of context too as we look ahead in 2025. We launched at Per Scholas a new 16-week IT data center course in addition to an existing 4- and 8-week offering that we have in many of our markets and growing. This is a question to all the panelists, and I'm going to go to you first, Riley. What are you most excited about when thinking about the future of data centers?
Oh boy, that's a big one. It's an evolving landscape. I think that when you talk about data centers today, right, I think that so much of this technology is emergent, right? When you talk about AI and things like, to be clear, AI is not new. Like it's been around for like 70 years, but like it's having kind of its moment now because technology is there to empower it. What I'm looking forward to though is seeing improvements. Right now, like, again, when you look at the way that the power utilization that these data centers have, the amount of water that they eat up, that is going to be made more efficient over time. It's going to be made more efficient through more elegant coding, right? We saw that with DeepSeek, for example, right? They were able to do compute a lot more efficiently than a lot of the other models out there. So we're going to see continued improvement in this, which is going to make it more accessible, right? You're going to have better uses for the technology. I think it was a Bill Gates quote, right? It was, we overestimate what technology will allow us to do in 2 years, but we underestimate what it'll allow us to do in 7 years. Uh, Nobody has the crystal ball for knowing what's going to be unlocked, but I'm excited to be part of hopefully driving more efficiency to the processes, being able to drive more accessibility within the data centers, and allowing, by doing so, allowing that technology to really flourish. So I'm very excited to be part of that. I'm also very excited for the opportunity that it creates for so many people. Like a lot of the conversation has been data center is such an amazing entry level into technology, which this is a field that sometimes like it is so difficult to get into because you need 4-year degrees. You need to go through computer science. Not everybody has access to that, right? So you can get in as a data center technician, you get into, moving beyond just plugging in the stuff and like Craig was talking about, you start getting into some network problems. Fast forward a couple of years and you're a network engineer. I mean, the amount of space, or you go more Jasmine's route and you become a project manager, right? And then program manager and you start leading massive teams. The space that you have to get into this space and then grow in it, it's really cool to see. So I'm excited about the technology continuing to evolve, get more efficient, be used in ways that we never thought possible. But then I'm also excited about how this space is just such a wonderful launching pad for people to build careers at, companies like Microsoft. I mean, like that's life changing for a lot of people.
I couldn't agree more, Riley. Jasmine, same question.
Yeah, I would say to echo Riley. For me, it's so much about the impact back to the community. Although we're doing great things within our data centers, Riley touched on it. We're changing people's lives. So their ability to work for a company that is innovating for the world, we have people who wake up every day and just, we remind them to process that. You are building for the world. When people ask us, about AI or the cloud, you are hands-on with the latest and greatest technology that is building and impacting millions and millions of people. And so when we look at it from that lens and the great things that innovation does for accessibility, for more capability, I think the pandemic taught us about what our technology can and can't do, right? And even this platform that we're having this call on today, right? Our ability to connect with other folks and build and change the way that we look at the world is what's most exciting to me. I have a son, he's 7 years old, and I think about when I was 7, the technology that was out there, right? Whether it was the big brick cell phone that did nothing, to what we have now, he can hold a cell phone that connects him to everything in the world because of the innovation that we have and because of what we're doing. And so I encourage folks, when you are reaching out, wanting to get into that space, think about the impact that you want to make. And that's what's most exciting for me. Even in the 2 years that I've been in just the data center space, it has evolved so much and so quickly. And even working with Riley and John in the past 2 years, it's evolved since we all first met each other. And so it makes me excited for the next years to come, what we can innovate and do together, but also the impact that we can make beyond that. And so it's an exciting time to join not only data centers, but just tech in general.
Thank you, Jasmine. And John, what are you most excited about when thinking about the future of data centers?
It's all about the people for me. When Riley said it, Jasmine said it too, but as soon as Riley said it, I was like, took my answer again. That's what it all boils down to for me. The technology is great. It's amazing. But for me, it's about the access and the opportunity that it's going to create for so many people to start or launch their career in the technology sector. Because there's many times, whether it's with Per Scholas in conversations at a Per Scholas site, with the client in general conversations, I often find that there are a lot of people that are trying to break into the technology industry who didn't even know that that was possible via the data center. So I think that's something that's extremely powerful. And then when I think of the future of data centers, I think about the partnership between TEKsystems and Per Scholas and the fact that as we continue to build these programs together, we're investing in human potential and we're helping organizations like Microsoft do that. I think Craig and Jasmine at different points in this conversation mentioned that like you don't have to have all the bells and whistles. I've had conversations with data center leaders that said, depending on the location of the data center, John, I'm hiring from folks that were in retail, folks that might have been in a rural location working on a farm, folks that might have not had a job yet, but they have technical acumen, they dabble, right? There is no ideal resume that is needed. But I think about this partnership and the fact that we're building these programs together. It's really exciting.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more than that. More with that, John, actually. I actually would love Craig's perspective. How can we ensure that the growth in data centers is inclusive and that we're creating real access to opportunity for individuals from all backgrounds?
Amazing question. But we don't have to look any further than what we're doing right now, right? And that is communicating, giving people opportunity. One thing about Per Scholas is we have to be intentional. Let's be honest. One thing I would say, if you can hear my voice, you are doing an intentional action. You're seeking knowledge. That is being intentional. Per Scholas and TEKsystems may advertise, but it has to come from you. It truly has to come from you. We talked about opportunity. With that opportunity comes intentional. You have to be intentional. And programs like Per Scholas will help push that further. I think, as I stated earlier, Microsoft hires for potential, not credentials. We've already established that. But that means you need to value life experience, right? When they look at that, some people think, well, I don't have. Yes, you do. Just tell your story. You have it. And you'll learn that during the interview process. You're like, wow, they want to know about me. They didn't even ask a technical question. They just asked me about my thoughts about something. That's called life experience, okay? Another component is your willingness to learn. Like I said, you don't have to pay for Per Scholas, but you have to promise to be great. And I don't mean great. That means believe in yourself. Believe that you matter, okay? You matter. And that's the biggest thing that can help you. And that's one of the things I carry with me, that Per Scholas taught me, that I matter. So taking a foundational pillars of Per Scholas alone as we offer opportunity is going to drive that question and really push it way further than people can ever imagine.
Thanks, Craig. So we're going to move over to the question and answer section of this panel. There's some questions we've been able to pull out of the chat. Thank you to all of those who have submitted some. We have time for maybe 3. I'd like to direct this first question to Riley and anyone else on the panel that may want to answer it. How would someone get their foot in the door on an entry-level role in the data center industry?
I mean, that's where I love programs like Per Scholas, right? So there's multiple avenues. I would first study, or like just log on to the internet and type in like what programs are there to learn data center near me, right? Per Scholas is in so many different locations, right? And they're doing so many different classes. Our company, for example, has recruiters in pretty much every market in the US and many outside of the US. So like if you're really interested in that, we can reaching out to any recruiter at TEKsystems, like we can definitely talk through like how to get into that, get into those careers. But I would really look at programs like Per Scholas. I would really look at programs that can teach you some of the basic skills. I think one thing that we haven't really talked a ton about today, we've talked about, like, Craig, I love your story, man. Like, I just feel good listening to you. The personal development side, some of the technical development side. But when I look at some of the things that actually really differentiate Per Scholas and that really matter, it's also a lot of the safety training, right? Things like the OSHA certification, right? So I would look into programs that are near you that can teach you some of these basic things. Then it's a matter of, networking. Companies like TEKsystems can really help accelerate networking, right? That's what we're in the business of. It is hard when you apply to job postings, right? Sometimes they hit, sometimes they don't. So we have tools like LinkedIn. We have tools where you can reach out directly to people. I always really, really encourage those. So look for resources that are near you to be able to learn some of the skills. And then I would say try to connect directly with people. LinkedIn's a great tool for that.
I love it. Jasmine or John, anything to add?
I would echo Riley and Craig, the fact that folks are here today, even willing to learn, shows that you're taking the right step. Do more of this, do it as often as you can. Take advantage of those opportunities to connect with folks. LinkedIn is a great resource. Definitely reach out on LinkedIn. Our doors are always open on LinkedIn. May not be fast at responding, but they are open. And so one thing I would also say is, like Craig mentioned, think about what you're learning. So use your resources. I think Riley said, look it up. Sometimes people say, well, how do I get my foot in the door? Have you taken the steps to get your foot in the door? It would be the first thing I would ask folks. And those steps would be connecting with folks and ensuring that you understand the industry that you're about to join. And so by doing those things, you might find some unique opportunities and take advantage of those as much as possible.
Jasmine, while I have you, are there any career pathways available after becoming a data center technician or any recommended certifications after becoming a technician and getting your foot in the door that you would give to a candidate or a newly minted data center technician?
Yeah, this is a great question for this group. So Craig's a shining example, and Craig, correct me if I'm wrong, but he went from being a data center technician to a data center tech manager, right? And then we have two other alumni. One was hired on as a technician and then a senior IT tech support. And then we have another one who was recently promoted yesterday or the day before, where he graduated Per Scholas and he joined as a entry-level technician, became an IT support tech, which is the equivalent to a senior tech, and now is an IT technical trainer. So talk about coming full circle, and now he's training our incoming technicians. And so you talk about those career paths. Those are all Per Scholas and TEKsystem alumni. I haven't even talked about other folks. Those are just because you all have given us the most wonderful people, right? And so when someone talks about getting their foot in the door, those paths are what you can take in more. And I'm sure there's some out there that I'm not even aware of, but that is just local advancement that you can make. With a little bit broader, we are growing, right? And so those roles that we need, we don't even know about yet, right? And so my current role is a regional role, so I support all of the Americas. That didn't exist when I started. So if that tells you about the growth, it formed because we are now growing. And so all of these folks who are entry level, we're taking them along with us. And so the future is kind of unknown, but there's lots of opportunity to grow and develop.
I love that, Jasmine. That actually segues me into the final question we'll take from our live Q&A session, and that question's for Craig. Craig, you have an interesting story. One of our listeners would like to know if you could dive a little bit deeper in your background, from which industry you came from before you joined the data center industry.
Of course. Prior to data center, I was a police officer. I did law enforcement for 17 years. Wanted to transition. Obviously, things changed in law enforcement, and it was time for me to take a career change. And searching for everybody wants to talk about cybersecurity, right? Cybersecurity. I'm going to do cybersecurity, right? That's the hot topic. And one thing someone told me, and it was actually from Per Scholas, he's like, how can you protect something you know nothing about? I'm like, dang, it's true. So that got me to do and get my foot in the door at Per Scholas. And as you stated, I graduated in 2023, and I became a contractor with TEKsystems at a Microsoft DC location in Arizona. I stayed in that location in that role for about 6 months before it's another layer called a V-dash, which is a little bit above just the entry level contractor. I was in that role for 2 months before I became what we call a FT, as a full-time employee. We love acronyms and technology. It's called an FT, just full-time employee, around February. And at that point, because you do believe in yourself and you know you can do it, what seemed impossible now seems possible. One thing we're going to always ask you is, How are you impacting your team, right? And in that question, I say, you know what, I think I can impact using the skills that I transferred from law enforcement and apply them to what I'm learning. And sure enough, the opportunity came. I applied, and I was me. 100%. It wasn't a bunch of degrees. It was purely life experience and me just being me that gave me an opportunity to do what I do now. And that is help others, mentor others. And it's addictive, right? It's one of the few things when you lay your head down, you're like, heck yeah, let's get to tomorrow. So my story, as I can put it in, yes, I did law enforcement, but I took everything I learned, which was working with people. People are like, what part of law enforcement were you shooting? Yes, but the one thing I brought was people person. And one thing we call data center tech managers is people managers. So I took all that soft skill, being able to be open-minded, diverse in my mindset, and um, uh, detail-oriented, all that, and applied it. And I was able to get to where I am in less than pretty much 8 months. So it's possible. It's doable. There's a blueprint already. It's already a blueprint out there. It's not an accident that so many people that Jasmine talked about have made it or experienced this type of success. It's really not an accident. It's not. It's a proven blueprint that, but it's a partnership now between Per Scholas, TEKsystems. That's the foot in the door. So people, in case somebody was taking a bathroom break or something, that's how you get your foot in the door. And with that, you just need to apply yourself. Apply yourself. It's amazing. It's been an amazing journey, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Thank you, Craig. I'd like to thank our panelists for their time today. Thank you all for your insights and for the work each of you is doing to grow this industry. For those of you who are listening in, if you're an employer interested in partnering or an individual curious about starting a career in data centers, we invite you to connect with Per Scholas and our partners following today's event. Please contact Senior Specialist, Corporate Social Responsibility and Workforce Development and Kelly McCarthy to further connect with our amazing panelists. Have a great afternoon, and thank you all for joining us.